So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this Shur webinar, honoring the life of Eliezer Azriel ben David, Eric Samson, the legendary Eric Samson. Tonight is also a very, very auspicious night to give the Shur, because tonight in 1950, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away, and today in 1951, the Lubavitcher Rebbe became Rebbe and really transformed Judaism throughout the years. So it's a really auspicious night to have this show. I'm not going to speak more than 30 minutes, but thank you all for joining. Tonight we're going to be learning Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, Chapter 1, Mishnah 6. Just let me give you a little bit of background for those who might not be aware of what Pirkei Avot is. Firstly, let's just give you the timeline. It was the year 2448, that's 3,334 years ago, the Jewish people left Egypt. 40 years later, 2488, they entered into Egypt. They entered into Israel. Remember, they'd already received the Torah, they now entered into Israel. And when Israel, they built the first temple. About 900 years later, the first temple was destroyed and the Jewish people went to Babylon. They were there for about 70 years and Babylon fell to Persia. That is when the Purim story took place. Just before Ahasuerus came into power, King Cyrus, king of Persia, allowed the Jewish people to build the second temple and go back to Israel. Not everybody did. I think only 42,000 Jews eventually went to Israel. But anyways, after Cyrus passed away, Ahasuerus came into power. There was the Purim story. It's now about 450 years BCE. Esther's son, Darius II, allows the Jewish people to go back to Israel and rebuild the second temple. That's when Pirkei Avot opens up with the men of the Great Assembly. So the first Mishnah, Mishnah 1 is about the men of the Great Assembly. That's the first Mishnah. After the first Mishnah, the last of the men of the Great Assembly was Shimon HaTzadik. He was the leader of the Jewish people. He was a high priest. He was a Kohen Gadol. He was the leader of the Jewish people. That's the second Mishnah. After him was Antigonus Ish Soicha. That's the third Mishnah. And after Antigonus Ish Soicha, the sages decided that there should be two leaders. One, the Av Beis Din, the head of the court of Jewish law, and the second one was the Nasi, the leader of the Jewish people. There were two leaders. Those are the two Yossis. And that's Mishnahs 4 and 5. And now we get to Mishnah 6. It's just after the Hanukkah story, at the time when the second temple was standing. It was a very turbulent time for the community. Okay, the two leaders are as follows. Yeshua ben Parachia and Nita Arbeli. Yeshua ben Parachia and Nita Arbeli, they say, as Kibla Mehem. They received the entire oral tradition from the two Yossis that came before them, which was Mishnah 4 and 5. Okay, Yeshua ben Parachia says as follows. Yeshua ben Parachia, he says, Asay lecha Rav. Okay, he says, Asay lecha Rav. A person has to appoint a mentor. Have you ever translate the word Rav as a mentor? Right, let me just read the Mishnah first. Asay lecha Rav, appoint a mentor. Ukona lecha chaver, acquire a friend. And judge everybody favorably. That's the entire Mishnah. And let's just learn it again. Yeshua ben Parachia said as follows. As you go through your journey in life, Asay lecha Rav, you have to have a mentor. What does a mentor mean? A mentor is somebody who's clever, somebody who's wise, somebody who's learned, somebody who's successful, and somebody who cares for you. And you appoint him. There has to be a bit of a distance between you and him. But you generally want a mentor to help you in every aspect of your life. You have to have a mentor for your spiritual growth. You have to have a mentor for your relationships. You have to have a mentor for your business. You have to have a mentor. It's important to have somebody who's been through life and who cares for you. He said that's the most important thing to have in life is a mentor. And you have to appoint him. There's a bit of a distance between you and him. And then you have to acquire a friend. Now look at the difference in the wording. Appoint a mentor and acquire a friend. Because when it comes to friendship, you invest in friendship. Right? I'll take you out for dinner. You take me out for dinner. But if you want to pick a good friend, you want to invest in him. And however long it takes to acquire him, but you acquire him. You invest in your friendship until you become good friends. Now, why is it so important to have a good friend? It's important to have a good friend because number one, you learn from his good character traits and you'll emulate them. Number two, a friend is there for you at a time of need when you can cry on his shoulder. That's so important to have a friend, and a friend can also admonish you. It can tell you when you're not behaving properly. So it's the most important thing in life to have a mentor and to have a good friend. And the third thing is he says, judge everybody favorably. Now, what does it mean to judge everybody favorably? So the simple explanation is as follows. Number one, you heard somebody did something wrong, don't believe it. Then if you hear that the person did do something wrong, then just judge him favorably. Why judge him favorably? Understand his astrological sign, his nature. Because of his astrological sign, he's born with a particular nature. He should have overcome it, but he didn't. His nature, his nurture, the way he was brought up, his experiences in life, all that he's been through has just made him into this particular type of person, and that's why he stumbled. Just never judge anybody negatively. Judge everybody favorably. Either don't believe it, and if it did happen, judge him favorably. Now, the obvious question that you can ask in this mission, it's so simple, we could have all written it, but the truth of the matter, it's absolutely profound. Why is it so important to judge somebody favorably? Not just for the other person, but for yourself as well. Because when you judge somebody negatively, what is happening in your mind when you judge somebody negatively? All that's happening is you're giving free space in your brain, free rent in your brain to think negatively about another person. You're making yourself negative. When you think evil about somebody, when you think bad about somebody, you become negative. And not only do you think bad about the other person, but it becomes habitual, that everything in life becomes bad. Like last week's parsha, we learned about the plague of darkness. Not everybody suffered from the plague of darkness. Some did, some didn't. What does that mean? That there's some people who are so negative, they can only think negative. They think negative about everybody else, and they go into a restaurant, they're not happy with their table. They're not happy with their food. They're not happy with their seat on an airplane. They're not happy with their cabin on a cruise. They've been blessed with the most amazing things. They become so negative. You know why they become negative? Because they think negative about other people. So judging other people favorably is good for you. It allows you to be positive. It allows you. So, and that's free choice, by the way. Any feeling of the heart is a feeling of the heart. But one thing I can control my thoughts. And it's a discipline, but I can control my thoughts. And when a negative thought goes into my mind about somebody who's done something wrong to me, yesterday, the week before, the month before, the year before, the decade before, and I'm suffering from it, get rid of it, push away the negative thoughts. And you have free choice to be able to do that. And always find something positive about somebody else. The fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe once told his son, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, who's yahrzeit, was today, he said, you have two eyes, a right eye to see the qualities and good in another person, and a negative eye to examine your own faults. Now, if we would just go through life like that, seeing the positive and only believing the positive and not focusing in on anything negative, it would be so beneficial for us. And then, of course, there's another reason why you have to think positive about another person or judge somebody else favorably for the person who you're judging. When you think good about somebody else, you actually are you're enabling the person to get out of their negative, their difficult situation. You're enabling them to build themselves up. So when you think positive about somebody else, you actually are bringing positive to them to help them get out of it. Let me tell you a story. There's a story told about a father and mother. And they had a set of twins. Let's say the twins were 13 years of age. And the one was a born pessimist, and the other one was a born optimist. Parents are going crazy. I mean, can you imagine having a set of twins like this? Anyways, they decide the kids are 13 years of age. They're taking the kids to see a psychologist. The psychologist examines the kids, says, I can't believe it. The one is a born pessimist. The other one's a born optimist. So the psychologist says, listen, I want to do a test here. Takes the pessimist kid and says, kid, come with me. Takes the kid to Toys R Us and says, kid, I want you to do me a favor. Walk through the store and you can have whatever you want. The kid walks through the store and bursts out crying. Kid, why are you crying? Because whatever I get you, I'm going to break. The psychologist says, boy, are you a pessimist? The psychologist then goes and takes the kid who's an optimist and says, kid, I want you to come with me. Takes the kid to a farm, and they drive into the farm, and there's a big barn over there. And the psychologist says to the kid, come with me. And they walk into the barn, and the barn is full of poo. It's full of dung. And the kid is the happiest kid in the world. So the psychologist says to the kid, what are you so happy about? All you see here is dung. And the kid says, hey, with all this dung, there has to be a pony somewhere. Now think about that. When you meet somebody else and that other person has negative, if you search deep, commensurate to the bad has to be the good. And why did God want you to meet that person? To bring the good out of the other person. Let me tell you another story. It was a school teacher. And the school teacher was told about a group of kids that were coming to the class. And the kids were over-excellers. They were amazing kids. Now, really, the kids weren't great kids. They were just regular kids. But the teacher was told that these were really exceptional kids. as a result of that, the teacher had such confidence in the kids that year, the kids just excelled beyond. And that is such an important thing about judging people favorably. The tragedy is when it comes to our own kids, when it comes to the situation, by and large, we focus in on the negative. We don't see the positive. And what really Rabbi Shimon Parach is teaching you, that focusing on the positive is good for you. It's good for you, and it's also good for the other person. Coming back to the point, by the way, of focusing in on the good, of judging people favorably, on not carrying storage in your brain about people who've hurt you yesterday, the week before, the month before, the year before a person goes to bed at night. And I think this is one of the most important prayers. We say a prayer as follows. We say, God, I hereby forgive anybody who has sinned against me, physically, financially, this lifetime, any other lifetime, I forgive. You know why that's so important? Because if you don't forgive, you are suffering the most. Forgive, get rid of it. Only fill your mind with positivity. The Kotzker Rebbe once told his Chassidim, he said, Chassidim, I don't mind that you have negative thoughts. After all, you have an animal soul that's going to push up evil thoughts. What bothers me is that you have time for it. Don't give yourself time for this. So what Yeshua ben Parachi in these 3 lines are telling us is something so unbelievable. Have a mentor, have a friend, and judge people favorably, be good for you and good for the other person. That's why that is so important. But hold on a second. We could have all written this Mishnah. No. It gets a little bit deeper than that. And why does it get a bit deeper? Because you have to understand Rabbi Yeshua ben Parachia's life. Yeshua ben Parachia was a very, very great sage. And for a while, he had to go live in Egypt. He took a group of students with him. When he comes back from Egypt, one of the students, I'm not going to go into the details of this year, but one of the details did something wrong. And Yeshua ben Parachia called the kid over and he said, kid, that's not the way you behave in my academy. I'm expelling you. And he expelled the kid, expelled the student. The student was absolutely distraught. Now, in Jewish law, if you've done something wrong, you have to apologize 3 times, but not more. The first time the student comes back to Yeshua ben Parachi and he says, Yeshua ben Parachi, I apologize for what I did wrong. He says, no, I want you to go away. I'm still expelling you. Guy goes away, he comes back again sometime later. He says, please, I beg of you, forgive me. Yeshua ben Parachi says, no, I'm not happy. The third time, the student comes back and Yeshua ben Parachi is saying Shema. And the student comes and says, sir, I would like to apologize. And he says like this, because he's saying Shema, he says, hold on, I'll get to you. The student took it wrongly. He thought he was being rejected again. And he became so distraught because in Jewish law, you only apologize 3 times. From then on, Yeshua ben Parachia lived with this credo. He lived with these credos. He said, number one, if this young boy would have had a mentor, if he would have had somebody to talk to, he would have understood that this was a misunderstanding. Number 2, if he would have had a friend to cry upon, to call upon, this would never have happened. And most importantly of all, if he would have judged me favorably and I would have judged him favorably, what the outcome after this boy's expulsion would never have happened, because without going into this detail, the boy went on to do really bad things. And it's a very famous story in the Gemara. And that's why this was so important for Yeshua ben Parachia taught this particular Mishnah. Because of a simple misunderstanding, a whole muck-up took place. So what's the down-to-earth lesson for all of us from this Mishnah? The down-to-earth lesson is as follows. It's free choice if we want to be happy. It's free choice if we want to see the positive. It's free choice how we want to see the world. But the most important thing is if you have a mentor and you have a friend and you're judging people positively, you'll always be in a good space. Now, why I say this is because this year is given in honor of Eric Samson, of the legendary Eric Samson. Now, anybody who knew Eric was an embodiment of this Mishnah. Number one, he was a great mentor. He was wise, he was truly successful. But you walked into his office, you walked into his business, and I remember the days in Wadeville, you walked into the office and you could not believe, you just felt that you were in the presence of a giant. And I remember so many times walking into the boardroom, we had all the pictures of the rich and famous and powerful and political leaders meeting with him. It was absolutely unbelievable to see. He was a true mentor to people. He was a mentor to so many people, but he was also a true friend. He was a friend to many friends. He was a friend to people who worked for him. I interacted a lot with Oscar Goldstuck, and just the stories that I heard from him, from the late Oscar about Eric, were absolutely unbelievable. He was a friend to many others as well. You know, in 1984, 85, when the Rand collapsed, quite a few Jewish businesses went insolvent, and some very big businesses. And Eric stepped in and bailed them out. Eric and Sheila were there for them and turned them around. That's a true friend. And I remember when Chabad went through its terrible times in the 90s. And I went with Maya Khan to visit Eric. You walked in, he made you feel like a king. He was there for us. He was a true friend in every way, and to so many other people as well. But at the same time, he judged people positively. He judged people favorably. And as a result of that, he was always able to see opportunity in life. He was always able to see bigger. He broke barriers in his brain. He broke barriers for South Africa. At a time when everybody was turning their back on South Africa, Eric was making South Africa fly. And that's what made him truly an embodiment of this Mishnah. So what can we take from this? We can take, first of all, we want to say as follows. We want to say to the entire family, to Sheila and family, to Sheila, we want to say to you and to Jeff and Ilana and Dorothy and Leonard and Frankie and Stephen and all the grandchildren, we want to say that first of all, we wish you long life, and this great giant of a man should intercede up and high only for blessings for you. But we have to take something. We, part of the share, you have to take something from this. And how can we transform our lives? How can we take from this teaching of Rabbi Shimon Parachia, of which Eric Samson was an embodiment of, how can we take from this and caravel and turn the world upside down? How can we do that? You know how we can do that? By committing ourselves to doing it. It is simple as that. And if you're connected to this week's Torah portion, today's Torah portion, where this year takes place on, which is by divine providence, if you look at this week's Torah portion, what's it about? It's the story of the Jewish people after the exodus of Egypt. And by the way, this is important to note, that according to the Torah, the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt, but only 1/5 of the Jewish people were redeemed. One of the things that happened in the plague of darkness is that 4/5 of the Jewish people died. And that's why there was a plague. One of the reasons for the plague of darkness. The plague of darkness was there that the Egyptians shouldn't see the Jewish people dying. But why did so many Jews die? Right? You know why? Because they didn't believe that they could get out. They didn't believe they could change. They wanted to stay like they were. They wanted to stay in Egypt and moan and groan. And that was darkness. So when we learn of this plague of darkness, it's not just historical, it's what people go through where they don't see opportunity. So after the plague of darkness and after the 10 plagues, which are really character flaws that prevent us from becoming the people that we could become, after all of this, the Jewish people leave Egypt. And what is today's Torah portion? Today's Torah portion is about the Jewish people. It's a well-known story. The Jewish people getting to the sea. They get to the sea, and what do they see in front of them? They see a big sea. And they look behind them and they see the Egyptian army rapidly approaching. And they look to the left and to the right and they see no man's land. So what do? Pandemonium breaks out. Absolute pandemonium breaks out. One group, the giver-uppers, they just say, let's go back and let's become slaves. They had slave mentality. Let's just go back and become slaves. Another group says, let's kill ourselves. Let's just jump in the water and kill ourselves. A third group wants to wage war, the fighters. Fourth group is praying. Moses doesn't know what to do. He's busy praying. And God says to Moses, what are you praying for now? Now's not the time to pray. There's one individual, Nachshon ben Aminadab. What does he say? He said, if God took us out of Egypt and said he's going to take us to the promised land, even if there's a sea of difficulty in front of us, we got to take the plunge. And what does he do? He takes the plunge. Boom. And he walks and he walks and he walks. And the entire community is laughing and scoffing at him. But miraculously, when the water's here, it splits, saving not only him, but everybody else as well. And of course, the message for us is exactly the same with the Mishnah. You cannot live in the past. You cannot, because you were a slave for a whole bunch of years, because you've had tragedies and all sorts of negative things happen to you. You cannot stay in the past. You cannot have that slave mentality. You got to put it behind you. You can't keep fighting with everybody. You can't be a fighter. You can't be a giver-upper. You have to put your trust in God, break your own barriers, and take that plunge, because when you take that plunge, the miracle will happen. The sea will split. And that's maybe what the significance of today is all about. And that's the connection between this and the parsha. So I say that we should take the energy of Eric, of Sheila, and we should inculcate it into our own lives. And we should really go in this 2022, and we should all sit here this year today and think, hold on a second, what do we want to achieve this year? What do we want to achieve in our own personal growth with regard to our relationship with God? Are we satisfied with the knowledge that we have? Are we satisfied with the connection that we had through however much we're praying or not? We should be sitting here now on this day of Yud Shvat, learning a Mishnah in honor of Eric, a few days before Tu B'Shvat, which is another Rosh Hashanah. What are we going to accomplish this year with regard to our relationship with God? with regard to our learning? Are we going to stay as ignorant as we are, no matter what level we are? Or this year, we're going to take upon ourselves a whole bunch of things to do, and we're going to commit to do it, and we're going to persevere to do it. That's number one. Number two, with regard to our relationship with our family, with our spouse, with our parents, with our kids, think about what are we going to accomplish? What more should we be doing this year? And then, of course, with our pursuits in life, whether it be professional, whatever it might be, what are we going to achieve? Because it all starts with the way we think. When the Tzemach Tzedek told that person, Tracht gut wird sein gut, it all starts with thoughts, because thoughts are real energies. And to conclude with the following thought, there's some of us that are so crass in life that if we hit something, we don't even realize that we've hit it. We don't even realize what we've done in this world. Punch somebody, we forget about it. Then there's some of us, we don't even realize the power of our words. And we walk over to somebody and we say something to someone and we've destroyed the person's life. How many times has a teacher walked over to a kid and said, kid, you stupid, kid, you're this, and the kid's destroyed for life? The power of words. By the way, that's the power of prayer. When we turn to God, we say, God, please help us achieve that what we need to achieve, and we articulate what we really want. God listens. We can arouse a new level of energy that even if God thought not to give us, or even it wasn't in God's intention to give it, the fact that we ask, God can bless us with it. That's the power of prayer. At the same time, our thoughts as well. Our thoughts are real energies. If you put infrared glasses on, as soon as a person thinks, negative or positive, they're creating energies. That's what this evening is all about. So please, God, as we have this year today, in memory of truly a great man, let us all resolve that we're starting this year, we're taking energies, we're going to caravel, we're going to turn the world upside down. And the only person who's holding us back from doing that is us ourselves. So Sheila and family, I wish you all long life. It's truly been an honor to do this. And let's think good and make good things happen. Thank you guys for attending.